See some people coming on. Welcome. Feel free to say where you're streaming from. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Hi, Kathy is from Rockwood. Welcome. I'm currently in Brights Grove near Sarnia. Got someone from Kingsville. Hi, Jill. Thanks for joining tonight. Just giving it a few minutes here. Feel free to get comfortable, grab something to eat or drink, and we'll get started. Welcome. Alrighty, I think I'm going to start. So hello everyone, and welcome to our third Facebook Live event on the environmental impacts of food waste, sponsored by the Academy and Great Lakes Refill Company. This presentation is being recorded, so you are more than welcome to watch it another time if you weren't able to make it tonight. So my name is Kaylee Kraft. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Guelph, and here I completed a major in child development and gained a strong passion for environmental sustainability. It's a privilege to be able to present today on this topic and to take a closer look at the effects that food waste has on the environment and what we can do to reduce our own impact. Reducing food waste is necessary for so many reasons. It can help save consumers money, it can improve food security, support efficiency in the agriculture and food sector, and significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Doing so is crucial to build a more sustainable future and to ensure that the energy, water, and land resources that go into growing our food are not wasted. This stream is brought to you in part by Academy. Academy is the newest online environmental learning and education platform for your family. If you sign up today, you can learn more about zero waste living with the course Zero Waste 101, which is now on for free if you use the code GLRCFAN100. Great Lakes Refill Company is also a sponsor of this stream. They are Sarnia-Lantern's first zero waste grocery store and bulk refill bar, and they're located downtown at 454 Christina Street. Their mission is to build a community around environmental stewardship, and they create access to package-free groceries and sustainable lifestyle products. Great Lakes Refill Company operates on a bring-your-own container model, so you can fill up on household essentials and eliminate packaging and food waste. At the end of this presentation, I will also be providing a coupon code to use for your next order. So before we begin, I would like to just say Lambton County's newly adopted Acknowledgement of Ancestral Land Statement. We acknowledge that this land on which we're gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I've also provided an educational resource. If you haven't checked it out yet already, it's called Nativelandca. This resource allows you to look up your city or town to see which ancestral lands you are currently residing on. I definitely encourage you to take a look and to also seek out the additional learning resources that they have. So now, without further ado, we can get into the presentation and take a look at the importance of reducing and preventing food waste, as well as what we can do in our own lives to help keep respect for the environment at the forefront of our decisions. So here's a little agenda of the breakdown of the presentation here. So let's get into it. So what is food waste? Food waste refers to all the food that is grown, harvested, processed, manufactured, or prepared for human consumption, but it's never actually eaten. It occurs at all stages of the food supply chain, from farm to plate. When I was looking at some of the research, I found that the lower income regions, food waste is generally unintentional, and it occurs earlier on in the supply chain. So maybe it's food that hasn't been harvested and is rotting on farms, or maybe it's food that has already been harvested, but it's spoiling during storage and distribution. In higher income regions, food waste dominates farther along the supply chain. So we see this with rejected food aesthetics. So maybe it has, it's not formed properly, or it has a bump or a bruise on it. Or we're ordering, buying, and just serving too much. In Canada and around the world, food waste continues to increase. It's resulting in an overuse of our precious natural resources such as water, soil, and land. And it's contributing excess greenhouse gas emissions to our atmosphere. Meanwhile, when we're throwing all this waste away, there's a number of Canadians who are facing food insecurity. Food is central not only to our survival, but with our cultures as well. It's how we connect to people, with our friends and families. We love food, but as much as we love food, we also unfortunately love to throw it away. So let's break this down and just put this into perspective a little bit. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization estimates that globally, almost 1/3 of food produced for consumption never gets eaten. 1/3, that is a lot. And if all food currently getting thrown into the landfill every year was instead diverted into meals for people that need it, we would be able to feed as many as 1.8 billion people. Looking at some statistics in Canada, more than 50% of all food in Canada is wasted every year. And 1 in 7 Canadians are experiencing food insecurity. So that just kind of puts in perspective how big this problem is. Additionally, around 8% of worldwide greenhouse gas emissions are caused by food waste, which we'll get into. It is also estimated that individuals and households across Canada alone waste more than $10 billion worth of food annually. So now let's take a look at the environmental impacts. We've talked about some of the economic ones, but we're going to look now at how food waste can harm the environment. So one of the main ones is methane gas. So when you think about food waste, you may think that food is just going in the landfill and, oh, it's biodegradable, it's just going to break down. But in this process, when organic material is sent to the landfill to decompose, it releases methane into the atmosphere. Methane traps heat in the atmosphere at a rate over 20 times higher and more toxic than carbon dioxide, another greenhouse gas. And 16% of all methane gas emitted comes from food rotting in landfills. So this excess amount of greenhouse gas, it absorbs infrared radiation and heats up the Earth's atmosphere. So this is how it's contributing to global warming and climate change. Globally, this is a kind of a cool statistic. Globally, if food waste could be represented as its own country, it would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter behind the USA and China. Not to mention the most precious resource, water. With agriculture accounting for 70% of the water used throughout the world, food waste also represents a great waste of fresh water and groundwater resource. This is a picture here of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. The total volume of water used each year to produce food that is lost or wasted is equivalent to 3 times the volume of this lake. So here's like an aerial view of this lake. Just imagine 3 times this, all wasted. As for land resources, if you take a look at land usage, around 1.4 billion hectares of land, which is around 1/3 of the world's total agricultural land area, is used to grow food that is just wasted. So not only does this result in an unnecessary degradation of land, but also unnecessary deforestation, elimination of wildlife habitats, and it's also wiping out potential greenhouse gas absorbing trees. So now there's a lot of doom and gloom, I know, but it's really important to also talk about some solutions that are happening. And food waste is a very complex issue. There's no single solution. It's supposed to be addressed at all levels. And reducing global food waste has actually been identified as one of the most effective ways to fight climate change. According to Project Drawdown, which is an international group of experts, they listed it as the third most effective action that we can take. So we'll get into what we can do personally and also what other organizations are doing. The United Nations created the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 as a response to the global concern about climate change. And food waste is specifically mentioned in goal number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. So to quote the goal, it says by 2030, they want to have the per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels, and then reduce food losses along production, supply chains, and post-harvest losses. Here's kind of a little model to break down the food recovery hierarchy. This is very complex, and I wish I could talk about this more, but it would take a long time. So here's just a quick snapshot of it. So at the top here, we have the most preferred food recovery options down to the least preferred. So one of the top ones is source reduction. So reducing the volume of surplus or extra food that's generated in the first place. Next is feeding hungry people. So donating extra food to food banks and shelters or different organizations helping with this. The next is to actually divert food scraps and turn it into animal food. Underneath that is creating industrial uses of food scraps. So we see this with biofuel and rendering fuel conversion and food scraps for digestion to recover energy. Underneath that is composting. So creating nutrient-rich soil amendments that we can use for farming and gardening to make more food. And the very last option should be landfill and incineration. Here are some interesting food waste solutions that I remember I saw one time when my mom came home from the grocery store. She had a bag of naturally imperfect apples. And I remember asking myself, like, what does that really mean? Basically, what they do is a Canadian supermarket, Loblaws, which many of us have heard of or shop at, they started offering discounted food items under the label naturally imperfect. So still really nutrient dense, perfect food that just has, less than normal looking. So some of the examples of the food that are under this label are peppers, onions, fruits, mushrooms, a lot of frozen fruit. So obviously you aren't worried about that when it's going in the blender. So kind of an awesome initiative going on in that regard. And one that I really wanted to point out, it was one of the first times I really saw the effects of food waste in a positive way, is when I was at the University of Guelph. I saw the Coffee to Compost and Circular Food System. So this is a volunteer-run mission, and it's basically diverting organic waste on the U of G campus. So what happens is volunteers go around and they pick up green compost bins that are full of used coffee grinds from coffee shops and different places on campus, as well as the leftover food scraps from the hospitality services. So anywhere that's cooking food and all the restaurants on campus, they take all the food scraps, put it in these green bins. Volunteers then come and pick up all of these green bins and take them to the Guelph Center for Urban Organic Farming, which is a farm near campus. Then it is turned into nutritious compost that can be applied to the fields the following year, and then more vegetables and flowers can grow. So this is kind of cool because it creates a circular system where the food that's grown on the farm is then purchased by the hospitality services again, and then they can supply more food. Another cool initiative is called Forgotten Harvest. So they collect surplus, prepared and perishable foods from over 800 sources. So this could be catering, grocery stores, markets, restaurants, and they share it with 280 emergency food providers in the Detroit area. Another one is the Food Recovery Network. This is a student-led movement that is fighting food waste. And I found that in 2020, they recovered over 1 million pounds of surplus food from campus dining halls and food vendors, restaurants, and farms around the US. They figured that this is equivalent to creating over 868,000 meals for people who are experiencing hunger, which is amazing to see student-led initiatives like this. So now I just want to ask in the chat some ways on how we can reduce food waste in our own lives. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind that you may already be doing in your everyday life, or something that you've seen before that you want to start implementing on cutting out your own food waste? Give it a couple minutes and you can brainstorm. So Arlene says, shop more frequent and buy less. That is a really good way to prevent food waste. So just going when you kind of need the food, maybe you're making a recipe and you want to just get the right quantities that you need instead of buying too much. One that I used to do is, or I still like to do, is to kind of take an inventory of all of the food that I already have in the pantry, in the fridge, and before I go to the grocery store, so that I kind of have it in front of me and I know, okay, I already have this, I don't need to buy another one, and you're not left in the grocery store wondering, do I have this or do I not? Kim says, grow your own vegetables and share with friends. I love this one. And another interesting thing is when you grow your own food, it really puts in perspective like how much you can appreciate it. So say like one bush of cauliflower takes months and months and months to grow. And when you see that whole process and you're watering it every day, you're putting in all the time and effort, and you grow this beautiful vegetable, you really start to appreciate it, and you don't want to waste it. You want to use every part of it. Kelly says, learn how to store your produce properly. This is a really important one as well. I think something that I'm still trying to learn as well is what goes in the fridge and what can stay out at room temperature in order to increase the shelf life. Jill says to share with a local food bank. Absolutely. You can always share the extra stuff that we don't use and help others. Awesome. These are really great ideas. Thanks for everyone who has contributed. Oh, we have one more. Arlene says, learn how to make stir fries and soups by kidding the fridge. What comes out, make it. Yes, very, very true. Arlene also says, canning and proper freezing. This is something I want to learn, is how to can. If anyone has any tips and tricks, feel free to let me know. All right, so I have some actions here on how we as individuals can help tackle food waste. So starting with planning. Like I said before, one of my favorite ones is to list the food that you have before grocery shopping so you don't accidentally buy double of what you need. Create a use first box in the fridge or pantry. So then when you go in, It's right there in front of you, and it can maybe inspire you to use up what you have already. Another one is planning and preparing meals. So meal prep, if you have time. I know it's hard sometimes to remember to do this, but it can definitely help reduce food waste in the long run. Shop. So use a list when you shop so you know exactly what you're using. And another really important one is don't shop when you're hungry. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone into the store and have spent way too much money and brought home a lot of unnecessary things just because I was starving when going into the grocery store. Another one is writing down the quantities you need. So if you have a recipe, you know exactly what you actually need. And a great way to do this is by shopping at a bulk refill grocery store. So one here in Sarnia, Great Lakes Refill Company. It gives you the control and freedom to take just what you need and reduce a lot of food waste in the process. Another one is checking the expiry and best before dates when you're at the grocery store to prevent any issues with getting home and finding out that you need to drink a whole carton of milk within a few days. So another one is to get creative. You're a genius. Think of fun ways to make new recipes and food combinations. Now we have access to so many cooking books, a lot of them that are actually focused on reducing food waste. And we have Google. If you look up any recipe, it's there for you. Some other really cool ideas to use up a bunch of combinations of food are stir fries, kind of like what Arlene said already. Curry dishes are great for this. Soups, omelets, pizzas, salads, all great meals that can taste amazing no matter what you put in them. Especially if you want to make like a vegetable broth or a bone broth or a stock or something, that's a great way to use up food scraps as well. Another interesting thing is skincare. There's a lot of really cool recipes online of how to make different products from extra scraps. So like a coffee ground you can use as a body scrub, or I've seen people use avocado and banana peels for facials or to make different face masks and cleansers and stuff like that, especially citrus peels. Another one is to use it up. So learn to love your leftovers, and it takes a quick heat up and it can taste just as good as the first time. Like Kim said, sharing with your friends and family, especially nowadays, we're all busy, we're tired. If we have extra food from a recipe, it's always nice to knock on a friend's door and say, hey, do you want this for your lunch tomorrow? I just made too much. Or make an event out of it. If you guys want to get together with friends and family and use up some stuff that has just kind of been sitting around in the pantry, get creative and make it a fun evening. Another good one is to label and date your food. So if you see something going off, you see the expiry date, make a quick note on it, sticky note, and say use by Friday. So just a quick reminder so that it's kind of right in front of you. Another one is this is kind of interesting, is freezing different pastes and spices. I always notice that things like tomato paste or some tomato sauces go off pretty quickly. So a good way to save this is to put it in little ice cube trays and then put them in the freezer. And when you're ready to make something else, you can use them and defrost them. I've also heard of people doing this with spices and putting different oils in them. Another one is to save and store. So it's important to know how to properly preserve and store your food. So this is one that I've been learning a lot throughout the last year. So this could look like airtight containers, wrapping greens in a damp towel to keep them fresh. And one of my personal favorites is I would always store herbs in like whatever container they came in, just in the fridge. But I actually learned if you put them in a jar of water, like how you would display flowers, they can liven up a lot easier and they can last a long time. Another one is the freezer is your time capsule. So just always remember that you can put it in a freezer type bag and save it for whenever you need. Another one is crisp vegetables like carrots and celery. If you chop them up and you put them and submerge them in a container of water, they'll actually last a lot longer in the fridge. Another really exciting one is to regrow. So you can actually regrow a lot of vegetables just from the scraps themselves in water. One of my favorite ones to regrow is green onions. So I just snip them off and I keep the white root of them, put them in a glass of water. And it's so exciting to me because within like a few days, they'll start sprouting back up and you can just keep using them over and over. And this is one that if you keep in the fridge, it gets pretty limp easy. So putting it in the jar is a good way to keep them nice and fresh, along with lettuce, beetroots, ginger, and bok choy. And regrowing is also a really fun experiment if you have kids. And it's a great way to kind of introduce the topic of food waste and preserving food at a young age. Composting. So this is something that I really want to do, is to get a proper composting system. So there's a lot of ones that you can put all your food waste in and churn them, and you can keep them in your backyard in the summertime. And I have a fun fact here. Did you know that an average home can divert about 150 kilograms of food waste a year from local waste disposal facilities by adopting home composting? That is a substantial amount of food waste. And this is something when I was in Guelph, we had the green bin program, and it was amazing how much of the garbage in the house was actually just food waste and compostable material. So then this can be turned into a valuable and nutrient soil addition for your garden and on a farm. Here's some additional resources that I just wanted to throw out there. Just some different documentaries that are about food waste. If anyone has watched these and you recommend them, let me know. Here are some additional websites and blogs if you want to just take a screenshot or come back to the video if you're ever curious. There's so much information out there on different ways you can prevent and reduce food waste in your own life as well. Here are a couple more ways to avoid food waste that I actually didn't really know about. One of them was reviving leafy greens in an ice bath, which I thought was kind of interesting. Another one is putting half of an onion face down in a bowl. Like we said, with the herbs in the water, you can put kale or anything with a stem in water and even just experiment to see if it lasts longer. Keeping onions away from potatoes helps to preserve them a bit longer. Keeping cucumbers and tomatoes at room temperature, which is kind of interesting because when you go to a grocery store, you notice that a lot of cucumbers and tomatoes are actually out in the open on not refrigerated. So I usually just put these in the fridge. So this is something that I'm going to try out myself. And another one is using stale bread for French toast or croutons. And I just wanted to provide this infographic here. It's kind of talking a little bit about the discrepancy with the use by versus the best before dates, expiry dates. So when it says use by, this is an indication about safety. So after the use by date, it's considered not safe for consumption. So this is for foods that may have a shorter shelf life. So meat products, some dairy products, or ready to eat food. So with a use by label, food cannot be legally sold after their use by date, since it's a safety risk for consumers. Then again, there is some leeway sometimes. The best before date is about quality instead of the safety. So sometimes a lot of people get these confused and they may have a perfectly good piece of food, but just because it says it's past the best before date, they will throw it away. So this is seen with foods that have a longer shelf life, so tinned or canned and frozen food items. And with a best before label, this food can legally be sold after the best before date since they are still safe for consumption. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. And I just want to know in the chat if there was a main takeaway from today or something that you wanted to say that you may not have known before. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight. We really appreciate it, and it's so much fun presenting. I love talking about all these different topics and seeing everybody join. So I really appreciate it, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun having everybody on here. Yay, I'm glad you learned something, Kelly. And when food is wasted, all the energy, resources, and money that went into producing, processing, packaging, and transporting are wasted too. So the further down the supply chain the food gets before it's thrown out, the more resources are wasted to get to that stage. So if measures are taken to reduce waste at not only the consumer level, but the production level, improving storage and transport systems, generating public awareness, and changing consumer behavior, the solution could lead to a lot of reductions in waste and emissions. Once again, this stream was brought to you in part by Ecotomy. Ecotomy is the newest online environmental learning and education platform for your family. And if you sign up today, you can learn more about zero waste living with the course Zero Waste 101, now for free using the code GLRCFAN100. And I would also like to say that Great Lakes Refill Company is here for you on your journey to reduce waste and make shopping more sustainably easy, especially when it comes to food waste with the bulk refill options. So while starting a zero waste journey may seem daunting at first, as we can see through the presentation, just a few simple changes can make a huge impact, and together we can make a big change. So as a thank you for attending, please feel free to use the coupon Greening10 for 10% off of your next order. So I'm just going to write these in the chat here. So the Ecotomy is GLRCFAN100. And the Great Lakes Refill is Greening10. All right, thanks everyone for coming out today. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care.